The forever wars. The forever wars. The forever wars.
What do you do when the political candidate that you openly supported and worked so hard to elect takes a political position that is completely antithetical to your own? Well, according to Tucker Carlson and his guests, you rewrite history. Here's Donald Trump according to Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, and friends.
I just got off the phone with Trump a few minutes ago, and he said their entire nuclear program has been decimated. It's done. People didn't vote for this.
The American people are 90% against forever wars.
And here is Donald Trump according to, well, Donald Trump.
You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. No nuclear weapons. You can't give them nuclear weapons. Don't let Iran have nuclear weapons. That's my only thing I have to tell you today, including Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. That's all. They can't have nuclear weapons. I just don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. That was the only thing.
You can't let Iran have nuclear weapons.
How can this be? What is happening with certain isolationist movements within the conservative party that are against doing what is needed to be done in order to ensure the safety and security of America? Well, believe it or not, these people will have you believe that actually the greatest threat to America is not the greatest state sponsor of terror in the world coming across the greatest weapon in the world, but $5 gas prices.
Right now, what would devastate the United States of America? Is it an intercontinental ballistic missile? No. What would devastate the United States of America would be $5 gasoline. The Iranian parliament just voted to close the Straits of Hormuz. Could put our gas prices in the United States between $7 and $10.
And America's cities.
I would just say the pressing problem in America is the condition of its cities. It's not Iran, it's New York, Chicago, LA.
And then, of course, there's the ever-present threat of China cutting off trade to the U.S. and waging war in Taiwan.
But is not existential, like the threat posed by China, what is the biggest navy in the world with hundreds of nuclear weapons, including intercontinental ballistic missiles against the United States, could shut off a significant amount of trade and harm us in significant ways. Iran is simply not an existential threat in the same way that China is, and even Russia is with 6,000 nuclear weapons. I don't think China would get directly involved in the Middle East, but if they see the United States worn down even more in the Middle East, that may change some of their calculus vis-a-vis Taiwan. As of right now, they don't have a nuclear bomb.
So why are we so focused on Iran? They can't be strictly limited to our national interest, given what you just said. I heard Ted Cruz say that the Iranians are going to nuke LA. So why is Ted Cruz saying they're going to nuke LA?
He is repeating a talking point to help raise in people's minds a level of threat that Iran actually imposed.
In order to justify American involvement in regime change. Then.
Correct.
Yes, this is the unbelievable thesis posed by Tucker Carlson and those whom he hosts on his show. Iran doesn't currently have a nuclear bomb, so it can't be that they're a threat to the United States. It's more China, rising gas prices, the shape of the cities in the United States. And yet, here's the question that they can't answer. If all of these are so concerning, wouldn't the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism having an access to nuclear weaponry magnify all these problems tenfold? If China had a proxy in the Middle East and China decided to go to war with Taiwan and we were distracted with a nuclear Iran, wouldn't that make the threat of China 10 times more worrisome? So what could possibly be the logic behind opposing President Trump's military action in the terror state of Iran? Tucker's answer, because he's worried about the loss of life in the short term.
The U.S. really had nothing to do with any of this. Just sort of Israel shows up and says we're doing this, and now we're participating. We were pushed into this by another country.
Some of them are on their 7th, 8th deployments, either to the region. They're worn out. The military has really continued to be overstretched, despite the fact that the Iraq and Afghanistan wars have wound down. And another war will distract away from that, will take resources away from that. Another war that not only puts more lives in danger and requires more deployments to that region, it takes resources away from things we need to do.
Believe it or not, you heard correctly. According to these political analysts, the concern is that Israel is dragging the United States into a war in the Middle East.
There will be some kind of strike on Iran by the U.S. military against the famous subterranean enrichment site with some kind of large conventional bunker buster. What happens next?
That means dead Americans. They're going to be on some of these bases. They'll likely come under attack. They're going to be part of air crews. They're going to be on some of these ships.
Really hope to be wrong in every one of my predictions. I hope to laugh at myself and apologize to everyone for being hysterical. I really hope that I can do that.
Imagine the chutzpah of watching another nation go and take out your mortal enemy in the Middle East. Watching them risk their own lives, send their own pilots to take over the airspace. Watching their own buildings get bombed by Iranian missiles. And for those who can't tell, yes, we are talking about Israel. And then have the chutzpah to worry that, oh, Israel is dragging you into the war. Israel wants dead Americans. What could be further from the truth?
It's the same argument that they used in 2002, that it's an existential existential threat to the United States of America. That Saddam Hussein is going to use intercontinental ballistic missiles. He's going to gather a warhead with anthrax. So he's going to shoot it into some mall somewhere. They're playing on our fear that we are going to be attacked by Iran. And they're all right back to their playbook, this drumbeat for war. It's almost like they went to their shelf and they grabbed their manual. They got it off. They dusted it off. Like, what did we do back in 2002? And pushed an entire populace towards war.
This is exactly the same pitch as the Iraq War. They think the playbook works. An epic failed war that we were lied to about everything, the reason we went in. 8,000 dead, 50,000 wounded, $9 trillion. That's what's happening here. And then out of nowhere comes a war with Persia. How did this happen?
But of course, the disastrous Iraq War is sufficient to explain all hesitation. As Steve pointed out, in 2003, the United States put boots on the ground in a war in the Middle East that had terrible consequences for the United States. Many American soldiers, many fine young men and women, were returned home in emergency medical transports, or worse, in body bags. And the Middle East afterwards was not any better off for it. So yes, the America First mentality, the instinct to oppose war at any cost, is completely understandable, given the terrible context through which the American people have been forced to live throughout the past couple decades. But is 2003 remotely comparable to our current situation? What the events from the last 2 weeks seem to have shown us is that both the Israelis and the Americans have learned lessons from the terrible events of the 2000s. We have learned about the ramifications of putting boots on the ground in a hostile country. We have learned about the terrible outcomes of attempted regime change through an outside show of force upon a foreign country, of which we understand little. Yet as terrifying as the prospect of entering into another war in the Middle East may be, the best thing we can do is learn our lessons from the past and do it right this time. This channel is ultimately dedicated towards sharing the Jewish narrative with you and with the rest of the world. And I don't mean to commentate endlessly on internal politics within the United States. That's not my business. But unfortunately, when the story begins to involve Israel, people begin to lose the plot. Because the facts on the ground are radically different than in 2003. There are no American boots on the ground. There are no American aircraft in the skies of Tehran. And other than a bunker buster dropped on a nuclear facility housed in a mountain, there is no American involvement whatsoever. All there is that lone Jewish state out there in the Middle East, surrounded by a pack of wolves, who is willing to put its own lives on the line in order to do what's right, both for ourselves and for our dear friends in the United States. Tucker, do I think you're anti-Semitic? Please. I know that word has been thrown around way too much lately. Many times it's been directed at you. But what I need you to understand, Tucker, and the rest of the world, is that there is a tremendous amount of pressure from anti-Semites, from people who wish us dead in the United States to remove America from this war. They want America to forget that we are fighting your war for you. They want you to forget that a nuclear Iran is an international threat. They want you to forget that removing this threat now at no cost to yourself other than a single buster bunker will mean a safer world for you and your children and everybody else around the world. So Tucker, we have shown that we are willing to put our lives on the line. Then why begrudge us a single bomb? Why oppose the most minimalistic of U.S. involvement to ensure safety, security, and prosperity in the region? I call upon you, Tucker, and for you, dear viewers, and anybody else who wants to see a world where we can be free, where we can live in peace, and where we no longer have to fear the terror that the state of Iran spreads throughout the world. We don't ask you to fight our war. We ask you to stand by us. We ask you to engage in mutually assured survival. And we ask you to make the right choice today for us all. Say no to terror, say yes to strength, and say amen to peace.